On a cold Friday evening in April, we took a flight from Toronto to Las Vegas. It was a short 4-hour flight and we had reached Vegas around midnight. We went to sleep straight away as we had to drive to Zion National Park the next morning. This was our second time to Utah and would be a 1-week trip focused on hiking and backpacking. We would spend 2 days in Zion and camp there for 1 night. The main attraction was to complete the famous Angel's Landing Trail. We woke up early that morning to catch the 7 a.m. shuttle into the park. Since the trail is very popular, we wanted to avoid any overcrowding by getting to the trail early. Angel's Landing is known for the last mile of strenuous and difficult climb. The last portion of the trail is narrow, while both sides had a 1,500-meter drop. Along the trail, the park had installed chains at certain sections in order to help hikers to hold on to their balance. It provided somewhat a sense of safety as we hiked up the steep and exposed canyon. Many sections of the trail also required some scrambling, which added to the challenge of the hike. When we finally reached the end of the trail, we were overwhelmed by the beautiful panoramic views of the Zion Canyons and its impressive peaks. After Angel's Landing, we continue on to another trail called the West Rim Trail. It had far fewer hikers and presented equal amount of beautiful views. We finished both of the hikes that morning. It was time for us to part ways with Zion and drive to our next destination, a town called Escalante, which will be the starting point of our 2-day backpacking trip in Coyote Gulch.
Videotaping.
The drive to Escalante from Zion was very picturesque. It was one of the most beautiful drives we've been on, and the route is infamously known for its diverse landscape and scenery. We could see the landscape changing as we drove, and we were wowed by how much has changed from just a few hours of driving. That night, we camped at Escalante Outfitters and prepared our packs for our 2-day journey to Coyote Gulch. The drive to get to the trailhead at Coyote Gulch proved to be a challenge. It was a 2-hour drive on a bumpy dirt road that required a 4-wheel drive and high-clearance vehicle. Luckily, our rental car was a Jeep Wrangler. It still proved to be a difficult drive, as the road was literally sand with rocks in between. I'm at the trailhead for Crack in the Wall, and we're gonna go down to Coyote Gulch for our 2-day backpacking trip. So we're almost at the trailhead for Crack in the Wall, and the views are incredible. It took us about maybe an hour.
Going to be going down. This is what we call Coyote Gulch, and basically you see that middle rock. Our job is basically to go down to the left of it and then into the gulch, and basically there's a crack down there that we have to squeeze through and then hoist our bags down. But yeah, it's beautiful.
This is the crack that we have to squeeze ourselves through. Looking forward to this. And then after we go, we'll get down all the way there.
Catherine's going through what we call the crack right now. You alright?
Yeah, it's not that bad actually. This entrance is called the crack because it's literally a crack between two giant boulders that you have to squeeze yourself through in order to get into the gulch. Since it was so narrow, our multi-day bags would not fit through the crack. Therefore, the only way to go down is to lower the bags from top of the cliff using a long rope. What we decided to do was have Daniel at the top of the cliff while he lowered the bag down where I was catching at the bottom.
You done?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yep.
After we finally got both of our bags down, we started our descent into the gulch. The sand allowed us to slowly slide down the trail, which made for an easy descent. As soon as we reached the bottom of the gulch, it felt like we had entered into a different world. The barren sandy landscape quickly turned into a luscious and vibrant oasis. For the remainder of this trail, we will be walking in the Escalante River, surrounded by the towering red canyon walls. As we walked along the river, we were awestruck by the beautiful scenic waterfalls. We often had to climb around them in order to get to the next part of the trail, which usually was at the top of these waterfalls. This is Jacob Hamlin's Arch. It's massive. Holy moly. Some campsites here, but they say you shouldn't camp here because you don't want to disturb. Our destination that day would be Jacob Hamlin Arch, which is the featured landmark in Coyote Gulch. When we finally got to the arch after a long day hike, we were amazed by the sheer size and magnitude of the canyon walls. It's difficult to describe the scale of Jacob Hamlin Arch without being there in person. The walls of the canyon completely encompasses you, which causes your voice to echo everywhere. Our experience was made even more mystical when a herd of deer came walking along the canyon walls with us. We camped near Jacob Hamlin that night and enjoyed a delicious homemade meal. The next day, we set off early morning as there was an expected sandstorm later that afternoon. We wanted to reach the car early in order to avoid potential encounter with the storm. Climbing out of the gulch proved to be much harder than going down. When we were going down, we used the sand's advantage and slid down. However, taking 2 steps walking up in sand is the equivalent of 1 step on normal surfaces. We struggled hard in order to reach our car. However, we finally made it back before the storm and headed back to Escalante for the night. After a good night's rest in the hotel, we set out to do 2 day hikes before we left Escalante. The 2 day hikes would be called Peekaboo Slot Canyon and Spooky Gulch. These hikes required a lot of scrambling and fitting through very narrow slots that our day packs barely fit through. The entrance to Peekaboo was a 10-foot tall wall that you had to climb. Here you can see that I had some trouble climbing up to the entrance. When we got inside, we were amazed by the beautiful formation of the canyon caused by erosion. This is the Spooky Gulch, on the other hand, it was known for its tight spaces that one can barely fit themselves through. Come to think of it, we probably shouldn't have brought our bags into the canyon. However, we didn't want to take a chance and brought only the essentials with us.
Okay. Sure.
Alright, I'm just gonna jump.
Okay.
Don't be a bitch, Catherine. Let's do this.
You see that arch up there? To the left?
We woke up at our usual 5 a.m. time to a winter wonderland. The red rocks we were used to were covered in snow, and we experienced one of the most scenic drives we've ever been on. That morning, we would drive to Canyonlands, the Needles district, in order to embark on a 2-day backpacking trip to a trail called Chesler Park. In order to reach the trailhead at Chesler Park, it was another drive on the dirt road. However, this drive was much better than the drive to Coyote Gulch. We got our camping permits from the head office, and as we drove further into the park, we were already rewarded with some amazing views of the Needles. When we got onto the trail, we were blown away by the impossibly shaped canyons. Not only were we blown away by the interesting shapes, the needle-shaped formations stretched the entire horizon. It almost seemed like we were on another planet, like Mars. We would spend one night near Elephant Canyon camping. And the next morning, our plan was to head to Coyote Arch, one of the main attractions in Chesler Park. At the junction to Coyote Arch, we dropped off our large backpacks and hid it behind some rocks so that we can fetch them on our way back. Coyote Arch is a massive, unique arch that stands isolated 450 feet tall from the rest of the rocks. It was an amazing sight to see. Beside the Coyote Arch, the view was also spectacular, as the canyon was lined with colorful stones that reached into the horizon. As we made our way out of the trail, we were once again greeted by Chesler Park and its impressive stones. We were sad to leave this amazing trek, but looked forward to the next day as we headed to Arches National Park in Moab. Early morning, we woke up to catch the sunrise at Mesa Arch. Then we will head to Arches National Park. We only had the morning to spend at Arches National Park. We wanted to do 2 special hikes. The first was the Delicate Arch, and the second was the Double O Arch at Devil's Garden. After an eventful morning, we drove 4 hours to Salt Lake City from Moab in order to catch our flight home to Toronto. As we drove down the scenic highway, we reflected on the amazing trip that we had, the people we met, and the freedom we felt while backpacking. Even though this was already our second time to Utah, we certainly felt like we would be returning many more times to this special place.